how do you even start these things? I mean, how do you open the first real video that you're planning on doing? It's like this, I guess. Although you wouldn't imagine how many different takes this has taken. I'm just going to go with this one, unless something major comes up. But this all made sense when I was planning this. Everybody is getting all their primary source of information is TikTok or YouTube or some other form of video. This is the medium of our age. Even people who read, they quite often discover which books they want to read on like this on video. So if I want to promote my work, and I have things to promote, I've written books. I'd like you to know about those books in due course. I do consulting. I'd like you to know about the consulting in due course. I have a newsletter. I'd love for you to subscribe. But if I'm going to reach people on video, I need to do video, and that's where the tricky part came up. It's like, this is not something I'm used to. So I did the logical thing. I did research. I figured out how to do the typical talking head lit YouTube video with minimal expense. I had one of the better microphones I own. The one that sounds like radio. I had the entire script written out in detail in advance. I had an interesting backdrop, and I was posed and standing, because standing is best for your voice, and it was just awful. It did not work at all. It just was awkward and stilted, and I froze several times and seemed to find it difficult to figure out what to say, even when the text was right there in front of me. So I did what any person would do under these circumstances, the logical next path, which was I called my mother and asked her for her advice. Now, this is not quite as unusual as you'd expect, although mothers usually do have good advice. But my mother in particular used to work in TV and radio before she retired, and worked in specifically in the as a TV reporter for in the Icelandic National Broadcasting Service. So she actually has quite an extensive experience, and she also has, like most of us in my family, the personality quirk where we do our info dumpy thing and unfiltered and unvarnished criticism of the work that's being done, which is fine. That's like she did that when I was growing up and reading over my school essays, which was like awesome, because actual advice, fantastic. Weird kid, weird mother. She'd hate that I said that, but let's brush past that quickly. So she came up with a list of fairly solid pointers. The first one was that I need to think about what the audience wants, not just what I want. It's like if I had the desire to look like a professional, to look like somebody who was a pro YouTuber that had this polished look to everything, and that was not based on anything that the audience is likely to want, because the audience is there to, the only reason to listen to a video by some of me is for my expertise, for what I'm what's in me conveying what's in my head over to you, so you can build on it or benefit from it. So it's like the audience, you, I'm guessing, is only going to be here for my expertise, for the things that I know how to do well, that I know how to explain well. And so I need to, so her first advice is that I need to drop all of the professional aesthetics and just focus on a video production setup where I could be myself. Turns out to be a bit trickier than expected, because this is minor issue of a crippling anxiety about being on camera and being recorded, which is, I don't know, it's like I'm very good at hiding it. But it's just something I need to cope with, hence the, this is something like the 5th take. So that's why I'm a little bit more used to it now. So the first one is to is to figure out ways to be more relaxed in front of the camera. And the first way to be more relaxed in front of the camera, which I'm very bad at following, is speaking more slowly, which I am extremely bad at, because I almost automatically start to ramp up the speed of my speech as soon as I get onto something that I find interesting, because that's the fun part. But that is less relaxed and harder to keep up with. So, but the more importantly than the speaking slowly is to figure out ways for me to be natural, because as a reporter, her job was quite often, or her beat was science and healthcare, which required a lot of interviews of people with expertise, and trying to find ways of getting people with expertise to convey those in a natural manner. And that can be tricky, because academics tend to lock up and stiffen up as soon as you take them out of their environments where they're most natural, like being like the lecture hall or their offices, or like with an archaeologist at the dig. So so basically you shoot where they feel natural, where they're most used to thinking about their work and their expertise. In my case, that would be my home office, this place. This is the natural environment of the Balder. Bookshelf or bookcase with workbooks. Most of them are boring. That's kind of comes with the territory of work-related reading, but some of them are useful. Gaston Lagaffe, the patron saint of absent-minded klutzes at work, one of my favorites. Photographs that I took in Bristol 20 years ago, probably some of them 25 years ago. I love photography, so I put them up to help me relax. Typewriter, like that's an electric one, that's a manual one. Photography and media related gear, and yeah, this is my natural environment. This is where I feel the most comfortable, and I can tell you, it feels so much more normal to spout my nonsense in this environment than where I'd set up before. The other thing that she pointed out is that as soon as you start to stress about pauses and errors in your speech, things can go haywire very quickly. You basically go off the rails. And she even has the theory that one of the issues that, if you've been following, probably you haven't been following, but one of the consistent results in research on retention, and that is memory and comprehension, is that audiobooks on average tend to score lower than printed books, and the ebooks are all over the place. It depends on the device. It depends on the like toolkit device, like the machinery that surrounds it. But in terms of comparing printed books with audiobooks, audiobooks tend to score lower. But there's also some variability in both. And one theory, at least one of the this is what my mother's favorite theory on the topic, is that the people tend to have an easier time comprehending and retaining audio information that feels like a natural dialogue, feels like that's something that is it might not be a back and forth between the listener and the speaker, but it feels like that. It taps into the skill sets and the experience we have at conversation. And that would mean that some voice actors, some narrators can do this just purely through skill, through the way they perform, that they make it feel like even when they're just reading the text off the page, they make it feel like they're talking to you, like this is a personal conversation between you and them. And that, in theory, should improve retention. But from the perspective of a video like this, the pauses, the hesitation, the markers of natural language and natural conversation might make this thing more accessible to get into than the paced, stilted reading off the screen. I mean, it's a theory. I mean, it doesn't feel implausible. It might work. I mean, I guess we'll find out. So, and it kind of ties into the whole thing where there's an aesthetic to professionalism, and it's not just in terms of the visuals. It's also in terms of the like acoustics and voice style. There's a YouTube look. There's a podcast sound. And none of these are actual professionalisms. They aren't what makes a podcast professional. They aren't what makes a video professional. They are the trappings of professionalism, the acoustics and aesthetics of professionalism. They're a look that can be replicated without the underlying professionalism. Professionalism is practice, and the specific look that comes with a professional video is a consequence of an expert applying their practice to deliver the video. If you replicate that result without the expertise, without the practice, you just end up with the aesthetics, even when it's inappropriate, even when the look of it actually makes the end result less credible. And you can tell this in for example, with documentaries, where you have a documentary where everything is shot like it's a corporate training video, and it immediately has this sort of level of artificiality, like an implied falsehood that you don't get when you'd cover the same topic using a more run and gun, dynamic and slightly uglier, let's face it, slightly uglier aesthetic. But that's the professional product. It understands the context, and it understands the role that the end result is supposed to have. And the same thing applies here, that I don't think if I had a softbox over there and a 6K open gate camera, although I'd love to own one, I don't think having either of those things would make this video more credible, or any other. It might even make it feel a little bit fake to a lot of people, understandably, because what's photographer know about strategy or management or machine learning or software development or web development. It's like the aesthetics of the video betray a different expertise than what you'd expect, and that's something you want to avoid, I think. But that also ties in with one of the biggest issues of any media production today, and that is, well, AI. Anything that is surface level replicable, like a specific aesthetic, a specific style, a specific look, a specific sound, those can be replicated using machine learning techniques that are basically using fairly detailed statistical modeling of collections of similar material to replicate a new material. And that means that when something is more broadly represented in the data set that they're modeling, like video, that aesthetic becomes easier to replicate. So the actual YouTube look, the standard softbox fill light, backlight for the hair, or for the bald head, that look with the standard sound and that podcast voice, that can be automatically replicated. That can be, like, if you don't need to convey expertise, if you're just conveying the cliches and the stereotypes of the day and want to do so using, and that's in a way that's represented using the cliches and stereotypes of video of the day, then you're competing directly with AI, because that's what they do extremely well. This less well, surprisingly. I move my head a little bit too much. It's a problem when I use like proper microphones. My voice goes in and out. That's why I've got the microphone setup I've got at the moment. The hand wavy thing that I do too much of. That also is, AI has problems with fingers for a reason, and that's because they don't actually model the anatomy of their subjects. They model the 2D plane that's represented on the screen. So they don't recognize the physical patterns that they're replicating. And understanding that sometimes the lo-fi effort, the imperfect and personal, is actually stronger, more convincing, and harder to automatically replicate in the era of AI, is, I think, the first step to doing something like this. Is that if you're going to do video, don't do whatever it is that AI can do easily. It's the same thing with writing. If you're going to be writing today, avoid the LinkedIn style professional, the sort of twee, shallow writing style that large language models are so great at. Avoid the mundane, the typical, the traditionally structured. Be a little bit chaotic. Be yourself. If people will forgive chaos and a little bit of disorder, if there's a person behind it, because that is what, no matter what you think about TikTok or new social media or the generation today or whatever age-related bugbear you might have, or whether it's against older people or younger people, you need to bear in mind that everybody's doing this to connect with other people. I mean, that's literally what TikTok is for. That's literally what social media for. Even YouTube, the people are doing this because they want a human connection. Even the celebrities that they follow on social media, that's because they want to connect with them personally. Nobody is doing this to follow a robot. Doesn't matter how polished the robot is. It doesn't matter how polished the videos are that the robot makes. It'll never be a person, and that's what the audience wants. They want people. So this is the plan. I'm gonna do the whole personal thing, be the little bit, whatchamacallit, error prone, and gonna be trying a few different approaches. The next video is not gonna be as meta as this, about the process. Might touch upon it because it's interesting when you're starting, but this is the plan. Oh, one note at the end: if my accent is a bit of a mess, and that's because none of it is natural. I was born in Iceland, partially raised in Lancashire in England, and my original English accent it was very Lancaster and quite indecipherable to people. So when I came back home, moved back home to Iceland as a slightly older kid, I tried to get rid of the accent. So I figured out how to speak English with an Icelandic accent when I want to, because that can be a useful talent. It was very useful at the time because I did not want to like when you were speaking to foreigners in Iceland, that sort of as a kid and as a teenager, they were more likely to understand the Icelandic accent than the Lancashire one. But then when I moved to Bristol 25 years ago originally, lived in Bristol for I think probably almost 15 years in total. The Icelandic accent became a little bit embarrassing because like one of my friends said it sounded like I was Dutch. I was like, no, we can't have that. So I began to consciously pick up on the accents of the people around me, and the problem there is that this was a university with a mixed bag of people from all over the UK, so my accent is all over the place. You might have like it's good. You might have the occasional word that's weirdly North English, and then you've got Bristolian, you've got South English, and an odd mixture of things. So if you've finding, and then the occasional Icelandic pronunciation slip up. So yeah, if you find the chaotic accent off-putting, then I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just of the results of literally more than 45 years of messy language. Anyway, next time